The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
LSU wins college baseball's national championship for the 8th time.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How about it, y'all? LSU baseball is the national champion for the 8th time under Jay Johnson. This is the second in 4 seasons, 2 under Jay Johnson, 2 in the last 3 years. Jay Johnson becomes the fastest coach ever to win 2 national championships with the same school, doing it in a matter of 4 seasons at that school. And there is no reason to believe that he is done tallying that number. What a day for LSU. We'll run through the game. Want to let you hear from Jay Johnson, post-game, some context on this LSU baseball team. And one of the really cool moments is that Skip Bertman, the legendary LSU baseball coach, was in attendance at Charles Schwab Field on Sunday for the championship. He addressed the LSU baseball team before the game, talked to the coaches in the coaches' locker room before the game. And when you knew the skipper was there, man, the Chanticleers didn't have much of a chance. Let's dive into it. So, there were fireworks early. Anthony Ianson was absolutely magnificent for LSU. Exactly what you expected. Exactly what he's been for LSU all season. 6 1/3, just 3 runs on 7 hits. He struck out 9. The runs he allowed were both on homers to the number 7 and 9 hole hitters, but sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. But after LSU went quietly in the first, Coastal came up, and I thought it was pretty imperative. Ianson gets a strikeout to start the game. There's an infield single. It's a ground ball at Dickinson at second, ranging to his right. Makes a great throw. Jones can't get the dig. So you got a runner on first base, 1 out. Ianson gets another strikeout. Now there's 2 outs, runner on first. Coastal steals. It's what they do. On the pitch, it was called a strike. Runner was safe at second, but it was called a strike. And the first base coach for Coastal Carolina was not super pleased about the call at home plate of a strike. So he began to argue. The home plate umpire then, of course, gave a warning, at which point Kevin Schnall, the head coach, starts chirping with the home plate umpire, who then demonstrably tells him, get back, 3 times. He persists, come out of the dugout. Boom, he gets tossed. The first base coach engages. He gets tossed as well. And we all saw the big hullabaloo. I know everyone's going to have their own opinion. I've said it for years. I think all umps, refs, officials are bad at their job. It's impossible to be good. In that situation, I can't help but go to what Jay Johnson said on Saturday night in Game 1. When LSU had Daniel Dickinson hit by a pitch and then was ultimately called out because he leaned into the pitch, Jay Johnson in that moment didn't come out of the dugout. He, as a matter of fact, showed great restraint. And this is what Jay Johnson said in that moment, coming out of that moment.
After you're not supposed to go out there after a review. So the umpire was correct. And I know that. And I knew that. I just wanted clarification the ball was clearly in the batter's box. I'm not sure what he was supposed to do. And it's a tough rule where you're rewarding the pitcher for throwing a ball in that case. And I thought he did make an attempt to roll, but at that point, my team needs me to stay poised and focused and calm. And as they said, get to the next pitch. And that was that. So you're not allowed to, after a review, you're not allowed to go back out to the umpire.
My team needs me to stay poised and focused and calm. You're not allowed to go back out there to the umpire. What did Kevin Schnall do? He was not poised and focused and calm, and he did go out to the umpire, and he got tossed. Some have said they're very different situations. No, they're not. There's rules that are letter of the law, And by the letter of the law, the home plate umpire enforced it. And you can say, well, you can't do that in that situation. Well, he gave the first base coach a warning. He gave Kevin Schnall multiple warnings, came out of the dugout. He got tossed. Like, what are you going to do? You know the rules. This isn't Major League Baseball where coaches kick dirt on umpires all the time. It's still college baseball. And that's sometimes what noobs, what people who don't watch the sport, who try to jump in and say, ump show, say. Why did Jay Johnson not go out there in game one and kick dirt on the umpire, get in his face and challenge him to throw him out? Because he knew the rule. Kevin Schnall is a first-year head coach who made a first-year head coach mistake in the most critical game of his career. And it was clearly not only on him, but also on his first base coach as well. Now, in that situation, it felt like the game was going to unravel. Top two, LSU at the plate, first batter, Jared Jones hits the ball down the third base line. Error. LSU's got a man on base, but ground ball double play by Luis Hernandez, line out by Chris Stanfield. Then after two quick strikeouts in the top of the third by Ianson, boom, homer, Coastal's up 1-0. Ianson gets out of it with a strikeout, but you're going, okay, all the things that felt like it might go against Coastal, now they got momentum on their side. Could this end up being a good thing for Coastal? I thought this sequence was the sequence in the game. Coastal takes a lead. LSU comes back in the top of the third and was relentless and got an answer. After a leadoff single, Michael Braswell sacrificed bunts. Derek Curiel has a fly out, so now there's a runner on second with 2 outs. Ethan Fry up, and Fry comes up, boom, with a huge double to tie the game. It was a massive response because remember, they got their dude on the mound, Jacob Morrison. They're feeling awesome about their ace. And so they got their ace on the bump. And just like that, after they took a lead, you respond right away. And it was so important after LSU responded to get a quick inning, and Ianson did that. Fly out, ground out. Remember, and that was on 4 pitches, by the way. And then there was just a little end of the bat flare into center field, like right off the end of the bat. And then right after that, he comes back with a strikeout. So you're back in the dugout hitting. Leadoff walk by Jake Brown. Single, hit by pitch, Luis Hernandez. Bases are loaded in that situation. And then up comes Chris Stanfield, who gets the 2 RBI double. LSU's up 3-1. Stanfield talked about it after the game.
Yeah, I went up there with a clear mind. And like Chase said earlier, I was just trying to do it for the guys. You know, it was 1-1 at the time, and I knew if I came through, it'd put us on top. And, you know, it was really just getting a good pitch and putting a good swing on it like all year.
I think what happened next was the one critical moment when Coastal missed Kevin Schnall. Listen, over the course of a game, a coach can't throw a pitch. A coach can't stand in the batter's box and take a swing at a strike or take a bad pitch. A coach can't read a fly ball off the bat. A coach can't field a grounder and make an accurate throw. Coaches in baseball can't do any of those things. Ultimately, players have to go execute. But there's a couple of decisions a game that are integral for a coach. And in this game, this was the moment. LSU's up 3-1. So LSU now has a 2-run lead. This, by the way, Coastal season's over if they lose. Season is over. So as much as you may love Jacob Morrison, if he gets into trouble, you got to pull it. LSU's up 3-1. Braswell's up. Sack bunt. You get the pop out, unfortunately, by Braswell. And this was the one moment where I thought I didn't really know what Jay Johnson was doing. It's 3-1. You have a runner on first base. It's first and second. You sacrifice you sacrifice Dickinson, to go second and third, 2 outs. And then here comes Braswell. Forgive me, 1 out. I'm sorry, I screwed that up. It's 3-1. It's 3-1, first and second, nobody out. You sack bunt to get second and third, 1 out. But you're getting to Braswell. And that was the big question. You're sacrificing Dickinson to get to Braswell. I get it, second and third with 1 out. So second and third, less than 2 outs, ground ball right side, fly ball in the air, run comes home. But it's Braswell. Braswell hasn't had a hit in 8 games. It was a curious decision, and Braswell popped out on the infield. So you needed Derek Curiel to come up in a big spot, and my goodness, did he. Derek Curiel laces the 2 RBI single just like that. You're up 5-1, and I'll go back to, and this is not hindsight 2020. If there was one moment in the game where I said, I can't believe they're doing this, it was right there. with runners on second and third and 2 outs, LSU up 3-1, and Derek Curiel up. Curiel had already seen Morrison twice. He struck out in the first. He flew out in the third. This was the third at-bat for Curiel. Curiel is your best bat-to-ball hitter. He doesn't strike out much. He's great at making contact. And at this point, all he's got to do is find grass and 2 runs are scoring. And you're up 5-1. Again, it's the third time now we've seen Morrison. I can't believe they let Curiel face Morrison in that spot. Down 2, runners on second and third, LSU's best contact hitter up. I thought for certain in that moment they were going to pull Morrison, go to a left-handed pitcher, someone who's going to be a better matchup against Curiel. They let Curiel face Morrison. He gets the 2 RBI single. It's 5-1. Then they pull him. Then the game hit a lull. Listen, LSU had some other moments, right? In the 7th and the 8th, you had opportunities. You had a walk and an E4, which put 2 on. You struck out to end the inning. In the 8th, after leading off with a strikeout, Daniel Dickinson had the drag bunt for a single. And then you had a caught stealing on the interference call by Braswell, and Braswell actually gets a single, which is a bummer because without the interference call on the caught stealing, on the stolen base attempt, I should say, you'd have a runner on second base, and Braswell finally breaks through and gets a single, but there was nobody on base at that point. The point is, you still had a couple of opportunities to get some insurance. It just didn't happen. In the bottom of the 7th, they hit a 2-run homer off of Ianson, but it just didn't matter. At that point, it's 5-3, and you had everybody queued up. Chase Shores comes in, needs 4 pitches to get you out of the 7th. 1 pitch ground out, 3 pitch strikeout. The only thing he would allow after a clean bottom of the 8th was a single to lead off the 9th. But after that, he would strike out and then ground ball double play to end it. And LSU was your national champion. It was exactly what you would expect it would be. LSU, there was nothing that Jacob Morrison did that was outstanding. LSU has seen pitchers like that all season long. Anthony Ianson was fantastic, and you had Chase Shores and Kason Evans queued up ready to go, and anybody else you needed once you got a lead, but all it took was Ianson and Shores to get you home. So the Tigers, for the 8th time now in program history, are the national champions.
FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action while you still have a chance. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You can place that first $5 bet on some NFL playoff dark horses. The Carolina Panthers sit at plus 240 to reach the postseason. The Bears plus 190, and the new look Raiders plus 320. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
The University of Wisconsin is suing the University of Miami.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now that Wisconsin is suing Miami, we'll talk about what happens next. We'll talk about whether or not Wisconsin has a case. They sure think that they do. But why? Why are Wisconsin suing Miami? So this goes back, of course, to the controversial Xavier Lucas transfer. So Lucas was a true freshman last season, performed very well at cornerback for the Badgers. He's from South Florida originally, American heritage. That's a really important part to this story, by the way. So after playing out his first season in Wisconsin, he decided during the designated transfer portal period in winter, he decided he wanted to hit the transfer portal. He informed Wisconsin as such. Went through the proper protocol. Now, Wisconsin thinks it was improper. We'll explain why. But legally, he went through the proper protocol to inform them, please enter my name into the transfer portal. And according to NCAA bylaws, Wisconsin had 5 days to comply with his request. They were required within 5 days to enter his name into the portal. Not only did they not enter his name within 5 days, they didn't enter it at all. They basically said, sorry, you can't leave. You got to stay here. You are a Wisconsin Badger forever, or at least throughout this transfer portal. And, instead of just sitting back and giving up, Xavier Lucas took matters into his own hands. He and his family retained the legal counsel of sports attorney Darren Heitner, who's a friend of the show. He's been on with us before. We'll try to get him back on again. And Heitner was able to, and this is important to note, within the NCAA's rules, because the NCAA had to admit you're not breaking any rules by doing this, he helped the Lucas family navigate the system, unenroll academically from Wisconsin. He met the deadlines to do so. Enroll academically at Miami. He met the qualifications and deadlines to do so. And ultimately, in the eyes of the NCAA, legally found his way onto the Miami football team and did so without ever entering the transfer portal. He tried. Wisconsin never let him do that. Now, after this event, Wisconsin did issue a strongly worded public statement condemning Miami and condemning Xavier Lucas. I doubted back then, this was back in January, I highly doubted that a lawsuit would actually get filed. But here we are. Wisconsin is suing Miami, and Yahoo Sports, they broke the story on Friday. Here's a couple of details from this story. Wisconsin is seeking unspecified financial damages and a declaratory judgment deeming Miami's actions as wrongful for interfering with a binding revenue share contract between Wisconsin and Xavier Lucas. Quote, Miami interfered with UW-Madison's relationship with student athlete A, that's Lucas, by making impermissible contact with him and engaging in tampering, the suit says. Wisconsin released a statement to Yahoo Sports on Friday saying that it, quote unquote, reluctantly filed the suit, that it is, quote, committed to ensuring integrity and fundamental fairness in the evolving landscape of collegiate athletics. The university, by the way, this is another important note, the University of Wisconsin is suing Miami, but they are not suing Xavier Lucas, and we'll tell you why. And by the way, the Big Ten Conference is supporting Wisconsin. That's a member school of theirs. They are supporting this suit against Miami. So that's the what. Let's talk about the why, and let me give you my takes and why I believe what's happening here, folks. Wisconsin's complaint is the definition of a contradiction. I'm going to use that word a lot. First of all, how can they allege, they being Wisconsin, how can Wisconsin allege that Miami tampered against a binding, quote unquote, binding revenue sharing agreement when at that time, back in January, revenue sharing, which has now been approved under the House versus NCAA settlement, at that time would not be approved for another 5 months. And back in January, there was no guarantee at that time that it would get approved at all. The House settlement just passed, folks, in early June. It was not passed in January. Xavier Lucas left UW in January of 2025. And by the way, even though the House settlement has passed, revenue sharing still isn't officially active. It doesn't go into effect until July 1st. So we're still not officially in the revenue sharing era. We certainly weren't back in January. So that raises a question for me, and I think it's a fair one. Was the contract, the revenue sharing agreement that Xavier Lucas signed, entered into with Wisconsin, was that an actual binding agreement, as they say, or was it a memorandum of understanding? Was it a preemptive, hypothetical agreement that once and if revenue sharing comes into effect, this is the obligation that I owe to the University of Wisconsin? I don't know how it can be binding from 6 months into the future. Now, the other part of it, there are lots of other parts of it. We peel several layers of this onion here. Wisconsin, they claim to have evidence of Miami tampering with Xavier Lucas. We're, of course, not privy to that, to what they claim to have. But it is worth noting, and if you want to find it, it's on our YouTube channel and it's on our audio channel. When we spoke 5 months ago to Xavier Lucas's lawyer, he told us that Miami was very careful not to make impermissible contact. Now, remember, in the case of Xavier Lucas, this is a player who has friends and former teammates who are on Miami. There are certain forms of contact that, by definition, cannot be impermissible when you're talking to high school teammates, friends, and that sort of stuff. We'll circle back to that. Now, whatever Wisconsin claims to have, if this case does get to discovery, the tea is going to get spilled. We're not at that point yet. Wisconsin, by the way, as noted, they went out of their way to sue the University of Miami, but not Xavier Lucas. That's a bit odd, isn't it? Let's use me for an example. You can use yourself as an example. If I'm allegedly under contract with my employer, and then I break that contract to get up and work somewhere else, I would expect to be sued, wouldn't I? And that's exactly what Wisconsin is claiming that Xavier Lucas did, yet they're not suing him, right? Otherwise, how can Miami be tampering if Lucas is not bound to them in the first place? Because if they don't think Lucas violated a contract, they're not suing him for that, then how can Miami be tampering? Again, it's the definition of contradiction. You either have to sue both parties or you sue no one. They should be suing no one here. But suing Xavier Lucas would be a big problem for Wisconsin. It's a lot easier to sue Miami only because Wisconsin realizes, the Big Ten realizes, that if you start suing athletes, college athletes, that sets a terrible precedent. And it now sets a new bar for pettiness. So instead, they'll just go after big, bad Miami. Miami, by the way, has been college football's favorite villain since the 1980s. Nothing new there. Plus, if they were to sue Xavier Lucas, which they're not doing, at least not yet, Lucas could easily countersue them for not fulfilling their obligation under NCAA bylaws to enter his name into the transfer portal within 5 days of his request, which they refused to do. They were required to do that. They didn't do it. If anything, Lucas and Miami should be suing Wisconsin. You remember something that Darren Heitner said was, had they tried to ultimately block Lucas's transfer, he would have sued them for antitrust violations. He should have done that.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Your Michigan State Spartans, they get their 19th commit for the 2026 class.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's talk about the news of the day, and this comes on the heels of a visit from Tyron Wortham. It was a small list of visitors here. There was only 4 official visitors this weekend, but man, fireworks in late June for this one because the 6-foot, 180-pound wide receiver from Sarasota, right there in the beautiful Gulf side of Florida, plays his football at Booker High School. They reached the state semifinals last year. I mean, he's a good player on an equally as good team. He was committed to the Knights of the University of Central Florida, but not so fast, my friend. And that seemed like a soft-ish commitment, I got to say, because committed to the Golden Knights over, I think it was February. He did visit officially Georgia. That's right. Not Georgia State, not Eastern Georgia Tech. No, like actual, like in Athens, Georgia, like that team, the powerhouse. Visited them 2 weeks ago. Visits Kansas State last week. And of course, well, guys, he was on campus this weekend for your Spartans, and Courtney Hawkins, wide receivers coach, decided, that's okay. Athens, I'm sure everything's going good down there. Manhattan, Kansas, I'm sure it's a beautiful sprawling coastline over there that you don't want to miss out on, but we're going to have you right here playing football in East Lansing, and this is a big one for the staff, for Michigan State, because any way you slice it, no matter what recruiting site you look at, This kid's very talented. He is very highly rated. Now, some have him as a high 3-star, like Rivals, right? Or 24/7 Sports, you take their composite, which boils down all the recruiting sites into one helpful ranking. Well, he's a 4-star according to them. And then if you want to take On3's opinion for anything, guys, he's a top 300 player in the nation. So again, at worst, hey, he's just a high-rated 3-star, but at best, like the guys at On3 are telling you, top 300 player. Now, right now, we're going to go back to the composite that takes, On3, 24/7 Sports, Rivals rankings, and compiles them all together. They say that this is the third best player in the 2026 class for your Michigan State Spartans behind. Well, first and foremost, it's your quarterback, Cade Kaufman. He's ranked number 259. And then offensive tackle, hailing out of Arizona, Colin Campbell, ranked number 374. And Wortham just 13 spots behind Campbell. So he is right there tucked inside the top 400 in the composite. So, guys, this is a very talented player and a commit that is worth celebrating here. So why on earth is this Wortham kid so highly rated? Like, why was he at the Under Armour Next Camp in Orlando not too long ago? Why was he the wide receiver MVP of that camp? How on earth did this kid for Booker High School get more than 1,300 receiving yards, 20 yards per catch, and 17 touchdowns as a junior? Well, you just watch his huddle tape, you watch his highlight film for even, 50 seconds. You're going to notice that this kid is lightning in a pair of cleats. He is fast, which if you're watching Michigan State wide receiver recruiting for this year and last year too, that shouldn't really surprise you that this is the kind of kid that Michigan State wants to target. Someone with speed, someone that is just greased up and can just break away from the defense almost instantly when they get the ball. He gets to his top gear like amazingly quick, guys. Like it seems that he is at 100% speed by the time he even finishes his third step. It's usually he gets the screen pass. Okay, I've taken my second step, and I'm already starting to leave, guys. In the cloud of dust I'm leaving behind me. He is a yard after catch machine. So whether it's, hey, he's going to catch us a nice little 6-yard hook on the sideline, turn around, burn his cornerback, and go. He's going to catch a zero slant. Any way you get the ball in his hands, he's going to make the magic happen. Or, I guess you could just do the old traditional route of have him run a go route and just get behind the entire defense. But yes, he gets to his top gear and he does it quickly, guys. And again, you can see the strategy for this staff. Courtney Hawkins, Brian Lindgren, Jonathan Smith, the whole offensive juggernaut, the whole mindset here is that they want speed at the wide receiver position here. And you've already seen that with the other receiver that is committed to this 2026 class, Zach Washington out of Wheaton, Illinois, 6'2", so a little bit taller than Wortham, but hey, this is a kid that also has speed to his game. You've also seen it with their strategy in trying to get Samson Gash. Now, this is a local kid, plays at Detroit Country Day. His 100-meter dash time is like literally a state record 100-meter dash time. This kid is lightning too. Seems to be that things are going to blow more towards the Alabama way for Samson Gash, but if your consolation prize is a 4-star flip, yeah, that's okay. We're not going to lose too much sleep on anything that's going to happen there. But even the guys that, they were just kind of keeping their eye on, right? Xavier Warren. This was a kid that we talked a little bit about. He was going to visit last Thursday. This was a guy that the staff had an eye on, and the name to his game was, you guessed it, I sound like a broken record at this point, speed. So even their plan B and plan C guys were guys that if they had anything that was really solid in their game, it was that they can get downhill fast when they're running their routes or even after they're catching the ball. So how does Wortham fit this offense? Guys, we are going to bang this drum yet again, and we talked a lot about these two guys that played for Oregon State last year. Because Michigan State's offense, Jonathan Smith, Brian Lindgren, they never really had these kind of players on the offense last year. We're talking about speedy wide receivers. If you were playing the Locked On Spartans drinking game and you had a sip every time we've said the word speedy so far this episode, oh boy, I hope you come out of your coma sometime Wednesday. But yeah, guys, that's just the theme of the wide receiver recruiting and the offense too, because we're going to talk about guys like Anthony Gold, Silas Bolden. Now, if you're just a Michigan State fan, you didn't really stay up late and watch a lot of Beavers games, chasing a lot of losing bets like I may or may not have done in my past, you might not know who Anthony Gold or Silas Bolden are. Well, for starters, Anthony Gold, he's not done playing football just yet. He is playing in the NFL. He was drafted by the Colts, and he was a great receiver for Oregon State 2022, 2023. Same with Silas Bolden, too, guys. Right before he transferred to Texas, he was one of the biggest names in the receiver transfer portal. Didn't even really do much at Texas, but I guess that speaks to how well that they can orchestrate an offense around speedy wide receivers. Now, the difference here is that both Gold and Silas Bolden, these guys are like 5'8" guys, like 165 pounds. Like, these guys are smaller than Tyron Wortham here. But still, when you're watching Tyron Wortham's tape, you can kind of see it. Okay, it's just get the ball in these kids' hands and then just let them go. Short routes, a lot of motion behind the line of scrimmage, some sweeps, some jet sweeps coming back into our lives. Except this time, we're not going to want to gouge our eyes out every time we see it. Shout out to 2019. But yeah, guys, I mean, that's what I'm seeing right here. Now, if you don't want, a bunch of former Beavers as comparisons, well, B Bliss wrote this question into Sheehan_sports on Twitter or X. I don't really care what you call it, but this was the question here, guys. What former Spartan is Wortham most like? They said Jeremy Bernard. That's right, Spartan legend, Husky legend, Crimson Tide legend, Jeremy Bernard. But I gotta say, I went with two different, very modern history eras here. I didn't go back to the 70s or anything for this one. But am I out of line saying that I see a little bit of Jalen Naylor's game in him? Of course, for all the things that we've just mentioned, whether it's straight line speed, which we saw a lot of that with Jalen Naylor, especially in the 2021 season, or, I also picked another guy too. This was from the Rose Bowl era, the 2013, 14, 15 era here. RJ Shelton too. Guy 6 feet tall, about 190 pounds in his playing days. Could he be a special teams guy like RJ Shelton was back in the day? Certainly a productive player. I kind of see it. So I think this is how the offensive staff sees it too. This was a big flip for all parties involved here.